There's a subtle but persistent feeling in the air, a global sense of unease that's hard to ignore. It's not just a hunch, it's a response to real-world signals. Financial systems are strained, with global debt reaching unprecedented levels and inflation creeping back into economies worldwide. The foundational pillars of our daily lives, food supply, energy access, and stable employment, are showing visible signs of stress. From disruptions in global trade to the rising cost of basic necessities, the evidence is mounting. This widespread anxiety you're sensing isn't imagined. It's the collective recognition that the systems we depend on are becoming increasingly fragile. The world is holding its breath, waiting for something to give. 10. The mounting pressure of global debt. Beneath the surface of our daily economic news, a significant pressure is building, one that rarely makes headlines but has profound implications for everyone. According to recent projections from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, the world is on a trajectory where global government debt could reach 100% of the world's total economic output, GDP, by 2029. This is a staggering figure, a level not seen since the post-World War II era. To put it in perspective, this means that for every dollar's worth of goods and services produced globally in a year, an equivalent dollar will be owed by governments. This isn't just an abstract number for economists to debate. It represents a fundamental strain on the global financial system that will inevitably trickle down and affect households and individuals. The real concern isn't merely the size of the debt, but the environment in which it is accumulating. This surge in borrowing is happening against a backdrop of significant global headwinds. Productivity growth, the engine of economic prosperity, has been slowing for years. Demographics are shifting, with many developed nations facing an aging population. This results in a higher dependency ratio, meaning fewer working-age individuals are supporting a growing number of retirees, placing immense strain on social security and pension systems. On top of these structural challenges, governments are facing escalating costs related to climate change adaptation and increased defense spending in a more volatile world. The IMF has issued a clear warning: without a serious commitment to fostering new avenues for growth and rebuilding fiscal resilience, we are navigating into exceptionally hazardous economic waters. So what does this accumulation of government debt mean for you? When a nation's debt load becomes this heavy, especially when economic growth is sluggish, the United Nations, for instance, projects a modest 2.8% global growth for 2025. The government's ability to respond to crises becomes severely limited. Imagine a household that has maxed out all its credit cards and has a dwindling income. When an unexpected expense arises, like a medical emergency or a car repair, there are no resources left to handle it. Similarly, governments burdened by massive debt have less room to maneuver. In the event of another economic shock, a pandemic, or a natural disaster, their traditional tools, such as stimulus spending or tax cuts, may be ineffective or unavailable. Instead, they may be forced to consider painful alternatives like significant tax hikes or deep cuts to public services, affecting everything from infrastructure and education to healthcare and social programs. You might already be feeling the early effects of this systemic constraint through slower wage increases, a tighter job market, or a noticeable decline in the quality of public amenities. This isn't a distant problem. It is a silent tremor that signals a much larger fiscal quake on the horizon. 9. The fracturing of our global supply lines. Have you experienced that growing frustration when an item you ordered online takes weeks longer to arrive than expected, or when the cost of everyday goods seems to climb without reason? This is not just a series of isolated inconveniences. It is a symptom of a deep and ongoing transformation in the global trade network. The just-in-time inventory model, which for decades allowed companies to operate with lean efficiency by receiving goods exactly when needed, is faltering. This intricate web of global supply chains is being fundamentally reconfigured, and the repercussions are rippling through the economy, creating an undercurrent of instability that many are beginning to sense. The interconnected world that promised endless variety and low prices is now showing its vulnerability. According to a recent and telling survey by McKinsey & Company, a significant majority of corporate executives, around 60%, now identify shifts in trade policies, such as new tariffs and export controls, as one of the most substantial risks to their company's growth. This sentiment reflects a new reality where the free flow of goods is no longer a given. Geopolitical tensions are compelling nations to prioritize national security and economic resilience over pure efficiency, leading them to reshore or friendshore their manufacturing. This involves moving production back to their home country or to allied nations, a process that is both costly and complex. This structural overhaul is not simply about an imported television costing a few dollars more. It involves a massive rerouting of labor, logistics, and capital investment that will take years, if not decades, to stabilize. The disruptions are creating bottlenecks, increasing transportation costs, and forcing companies to rethink their entire operational strategy. This widespread uncertainty has a chilling effect on the broader economy. When businesses cannot reliably predict their costs or the availability of essential components, they become cautious. This caution manifests in tangible ways that directly impact the workforce and the economy at large. Companies begin to delay major investments in new factories or technologies. They pull back on hiring, leaving job openings unfilled or instituting hiring freezes. They start to accumulate cash reserves as a buffer against future shocks, rather than deploying that capital to fuel growth and innovation. These are classic leading indicators that often appear before a more pronounced economic downturn. So, if you are feeling a heightened sense of anxiety about your job security, or if you observe a more hesitant and risk-averse mood within your industry, you are picking up on these early warning signs. These are the subtle but powerful shifts that may not dominate the daily news cycle but often precede larger, more disruptive economic adjustments. The warning lights on the global economic dashboard are indeed flashing. 8. Decoding the whispers of corporate caution beyond the familiar economic indicators that we see reported in the news. Like GDP growth and unemployment rates, there is a deeper, more predictive layer of information that offers a glimpse into the future. Researchers and analysts are now turning to unconventional sources to gauge the true health of the economy, and what they are finding is revealing. One of the most powerful of these new methods involves using advanced artificial intelligence and deep learning techniques to analyze the language used in corporate earnings calls. These calls are quarterly events where the leaders of publicly traded companies discuss their performance and, more importantly, their outlook for the future with investors and analysts. By parsing the nuanced language, tone, and sentiment expressed by thousands of executives across all industries, a clearer picture of their collective confidence or lack thereof emerges. A groundbreaking academic study highlighted this phenomenon by creating what it called an AI economy score. This score was developed by analyzing the transcripts of over 120,000 corporate earnings calls. The findings were striking. This sentiment-based metric was able to predict future GDP, industrial production, and employment trends more accurately than many traditional economic models. In essence, the people who are on the front lines of the economy, the managers and executives making daily decisions about inventory, production, and staffing, are collectively signaling what's to come long before it shows up in official statistics. Their words betray a caution that often precedes a slowdown. When executives start using more tentative language, express concerns about future demand, or focus on cost-cutting measures, it's a strong indicator that they are preparing for leaner times. This shift in corporate sentiment is a critical piece of the puzzle, because it is not just a reflection of feelings. It is a driver of real-world actions. The collective mood in the boardroom directly influences the decisions that shape the economic landscape for everyone. When confidence is high, companies invest in expansion, launch new products, and actively hire new talent. This creates a virtuous cycle of growth, opportunity, and prosperity. Conversely, when sentiment turns cautious or pessimistic, the opposite occurs. Hiring plans are shelved, investment projects are postponed, and the focus shifts from expansion to preservation. This is why the uneasy feeling you might have about the economy is not just a personal anxiety. It is a shared intuition that aligns with the subtle but decisive actions being taken in corporate headquarters around the world. They are already adjusting their strategies, tightening their belts, and preparing for a future that looks more uncertain. This collective pivot towards caution is what you may be sensing as a change in your local job market, a reduction in consumer opportunities, and a general feeling that the ground beneath our feet is becoming less stable. 7. The slow grind of stagnant productivity. There's a hidden force quietly eroding the foundation of our economic well-being, one that doesn't grab headlines but has a profound impact on your wallet and career prospects. It's the challenge of stagnating productivity growth. For years, the rate at which we increase output per worker has been disappointingly low across the globe. According to the World Bank, This trend is particularly concerning in emerging and developing economies, which represent over 80% of the world's population. These regions are projected to experience slower growth in the coming years than they did in the 2010s, dimming the prospects for widespread prosperity. At the same time, advanced economies are grappling with their own set of challenges, including aging populations where fewer workers support more retirees, and a slowdown in the pace at which new innovations translate into tangible economic gains. Why is this so critical? Because productivity growth is the primary engine of rising living standards. When productivity falters, it creates a difficult choice for businesses. They can either keep wages stagnant or pass on rising costs to consumers through higher prices. Often we experience both. This dual pressure erodes financial stability for millions of households. If you've noticed that meaningful pay raises have become a thing of the past, or that your salary doesn't stretch as far as it used to, you are feeling the direct consequences of this productivity slump. It's the underlying reason why securing a good, well-paying job feels more competitive, and why financial progress seems harder to achieve. This isn't a temporary blip. It's a structural problem that is becoming deeply embedded in the global economy. This productivity challenge does not exist in a vacuum. It is intricately connected to the other systemic pressures we are facing. A low-growth environment makes it far more difficult for governments to manage their soaring debt levels as tax revenues fail to keep pace with spending. It exacerbates the fragility of supply chains, as companies lack the resources and confidence to invest in new, more efficient technologies and infrastructure. It also fuels the cautious investment climate, creating a feedback loop where low productivity leads to less investment, which in turn leads to even lower productivity. The feeling that the economic ground is becoming less solid is not your imagination. It is a rational response to the slow, grinding pressure of an economy whose foundational pillars are weakening. The system is struggling to generate the growth needed to sustain prosperity, and that strain is becoming palpable. 6. The rising tide of geopolitical instability. Beyond the economic charts and financial reports, there is another powerful force contributing to the global sense of unease: geopolitical risk. This isn't just about distant conflicts or diplomatic spats, it's about a fundamental increase in global friction that has the potential to trigger widespread systemic shocks. Recent analyses employing advanced machine learning to scan global news have demonstrated that indicators of geopolitical tension and economic policy uncertainty are potent predictors of financial risk in countries around the world. In simpler terms, the rising tensions between major world powers, the proliferation of trade barriers and technology bans, and the cascading effects of climate-related disasters all act as accelerants, magnifying the fragility of our interconnected global system. For example, the International Monetary Fund has issued stark warnings about the potential economic fallout from escalating trade disputes, particularly between major economies like the United States and China. Their models suggest that a significant worsening of these tensions could shave more than a percentage point off global economic growth in the near future. While it's true that some level of conflict has always been a feature of the international landscape, what is different now is the synchronization of these risks. We are in a unique moment where multiple stressors are converging simultaneously. The world is grappling with record-high debt burdens, sluggish economic growth, brittle supply chains, and a cautious investment environment. Adding a volatile geopolitical climate to this already combustible mix dramatically increases the likelihood that the next shock, be it a trade war, a resource conflict, or a major climate event, will have consequences that spread farther and faster than ever before. This interconnectedness means that a crisis in one part of the world is no longer isolated. A regional conflict can disrupt global energy supplies, a trade dispute can cripple industries thousands of miles away, and a climate disaster can trigger food shortages on another continent. The systems that once promoted global efficiency and integration are now acting as conduits for transmitting shock and instability. This is why the vague but persistent feeling that something is amiss feels so profound. It's the intuitive recognition that the buffers and safeguards that once protected the global system have been eroded. The various strands of risk, economic, financial, and political, are intertwining to create a complex web of vulnerability. The world is holding its breath, not for a single, predictable event, but for the possibility that any one of these tensions could be the one that pulls the entire structure down. 5. The quiet crisis in our global food supply. Right now, a critical vulnerability is developing in the one system that underpins all of human society, our global food supply. Many are unaware that in 2025, more than 60 countries have implemented export restrictions on at least one essential food item. A level of protectionism not seen since the global food crisis of 2000. This is a clear signal that nations are growing increasingly worried about their own food security. According to the World Bank's latest updates, nearly 30 million people are currently facing food insecurity, and the prices of key staples like rice, corn, and sugar have seen double-digit increases since the beginning of the year. This isn't just a temporary price spike. It's evidence of a deeper, more systemic strain. Compounding the problem, the cost of fertilizer, a critical component of modern agriculture, remains stubbornly high, around 40% above pre-pandemic levels. This combination of factors is creating a pressure cooker environment for global food production. This growing scarcity is being amplified by severe logistical and environmental challenges. Key trade arteries are under stress. The Panama Canal, a vital channel for global commerce that handles 6% of world trade, is operating at a drastically reduced capacity due to an unprecedented drought, forcing grain shipments to take longer, more expensive routes. This adds cost and time to a system that is already fragile. Meanwhile, farmers in critical breadbasket regions from the American Midwest to parts of Europe are contending with flash droughts, a dangerous phenomenon where soil moisture evaporates with shocking speed, turning healthy fields into barren land in a matter of weeks. Even the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, has warned that increasingly volatile and extreme weather patterns are likely to make food prices unpredictable and unstable for the foreseeable future. This is not a crisis that announces itself with a sudden bang. It is a slow, creeping breakdown that seeps into the system gradually. The effects build quietly behind the scenes, in farmers' fields, in shipping manifests, and on commodity trading floors, long before they become obvious on supermarket shelves. The uneasy feeling that something significant is on the horizon may be rooted in this deep, primal understanding that when the food system begins to wobble, everything else is at risk. Food insecurity is a foundational pressure that can drive social unrest, mass migration, and even armed conflict. The subtle, gut-level anxiety that many people are feeling may be their intuition picking up on the tremors in this most essential of systems. It's the feeling that the ground beneath us is shifting, and the quiet fear that one day soon, that unease will have a very tangible and visible cause. 4. The overstretched global energy grid. Energy is the silent engine of modern civilization. It powers our homes, fuels our industries, and moves the food that sustains us. Yet, this critical system is showing signs of severe strain, operating closer to its limits than ever before. According to the International Energy Agency's recent World Energy Outlook, the global appetite for electricity has surged by nearly 7% since 2023. This unprecedented demand is not just from a growing population, it's being supercharged by new, power-hungry technologies. The explosion of AI data centers, the accelerating adoption of electric vehicles, and the massive infrastructure projects needed for climate change adaptation are all placing immense pressure on grids that were never designed for this load. For decades, particularly in the United States and parts of Europe, investment in upgrading and modernizing this essential infrastructure has lagged. Now, we are facing the consequences of that neglect. The risk is no longer theoretical. The North American Electric Reliability Corporation, the body responsible for assessing grid stability, has issued a stark warning. The U.S. grid faces an 80% greater risk of blackouts this winter. This isn't just about a few flickering lights, it's about the potential for widespread, prolonged power outages that could disrupt every facet of daily life. At the same time, the global oil market is in a precarious state. Ongoing geopolitical conflicts in the Middle East, strategic production cuts by OPEC+, and soaring insurance costs for shipping have driven crude oil prices back over the $105 per barrel mark. In Europe, natural gas prices remain stubbornly high, nearly double what they were before the recent conflicts. Meanwhile, China, now the world's largest energy consumer, is dramatically increasing its imports of liquefied natural gas, further tightening global supply. While the transition to renewable energy sources is a vital long-term goal, it is not happening quickly enough to fill the immediate and growing gap between energy supply and demand. The World Economic Forum has acknowledged that a sudden spike in energy prices could easily derail the fragile global economic recovery and reignite inflationary pressures. This is the vibration you feel, the constant, low hum of a global energy system being pushed to its breaking point, struggling to keep pace with a world that demands more than it can sustainably provide. 3. The financial system's hidden fragility. For most people, the stability of the financial system is judged by the simple act of a banking app opening correctly on their smartphone. But behind that digital interface lies a complex and increasingly fragile architecture, built on a mountain of interconnected bets. The Bank for International Settlements reports that the global derivatives market, a vast, intricate web of financial contracts linking the world's largest banks, corporations, and hedge funds, has now swollen to an exposure of over $720 trillion. This number is almost incomprehensibly large, representing nearly 7 times the entire global economy. Every major financial institution is woven into this network, creating a system where the failure of one key player could trigger a catastrophic chain reaction, sending shockwaves across the globe in a matter of hours. The 2008 financial crisis, which brought the world to its knees, was sparked by a problem in the subprime mortgage market, worth about $600 billion. Today, we are staring at a potential vulnerability that is orders of magnitude larger. The sparks that could ignite this financial tinderbox are already visible. In the United States alone, the commercial real estate market is buckling under approximately $1.9 trillion in debt, with default rates having tripled since 2020. This crisis is hitting regional banks particularly hard, as they are heavily exposed to these souring loans. The Federal Reserve's own 2025 Financial Stability Report has raised alarms about hidden vulnerabilities within the shadow banking sector, a sprawling network of unregulated lenders that engage in risky behavior, such as using short-term borrowing to finance long-term illiquid investments. At the same time, household debt is reaching dangerous levels. Total consumer debt in the U.S. has surpassed $18 trillion for the first time in history. Delinquencies on auto loans are now higher than at any point since the Great Recession, and credit card defaults are rising steadily each month. Small business bankruptcies have also jumped by 37% compared to last year. This isn't an abstract economic forecast, it is the lived reality for millions of people. It's felt in the sting of higher bills, the difficulty of securing a loan, and the quiet anxiety of watching a paycheck that no longer stretches as far as it used to. The surface of the banking system may appear calm, but underneath, liquidity is tightening and the system's resilience is being tested. 2. The global shift in collective consciousness. There is a palpable change in the global mood, a kind of atmospheric static that seems to be registering on a subconscious level for people everywhere. This is more than just a feeling. It's a measurable phenomenon. The World Health Organization has noted a staggering 30% increase in anxiety and stress-related disorders worldwide since 2020, a trend that shows no signs of slowing down. But this is not merely a collection of individual struggles. It is evolving into a collective consciousness, a shared sense of impending disruption that sociologists refer to as anticipatory dread. It's the deep-seated intuition that a significant system-level change is on the horizon, even if its exact form remains unclear. This sentiment echoes across the digital world, where countless individuals are voicing the same uneasy conviction. Something big is coming. This psychological shift has a physiological basis. Research from institutions like Stanford University has shown that prolonged exposure to chronic uncertainty stemming from economic instability, rumors of war, or supply chain shortages can physically rewire the brain's threat detection systems, locking them into a state of high alert. When billions of people are simultaneously experiencing this heightened state of stress, society itself begins to synchronize around a frequency of fear and caution. This is reflected in observable behaviors. A notable migration of people from dense urban centers to more rural areas, record-breaking sales of firearms, a boom in the online prepping community, and a profound withdrawal of trust from traditional institutions. The 2025 Edelman Trust Barometer confirms this, revealing that global trust in both media and government has plummeted to the lowest levels ever recorded. This erosion of confidence is not a random development, it is the natural psychological immune response of a civilization that senses deep-seated instability. When your instincts are screaming that the ground beneath you is shifting, it's a signal worth heeding. We are living in an unprecedented era where a multitude of powerful stressors, economic, geopolitical, environmental, and technological, are converging all at once. It is this unique convergence that is fueling the collective intuition that the world is approaching a profound turning point. The great convergence of global crises. Every historical era faces its own set of challenges, but the situation unfolding now feels fundamentally different. We are not grappling with a single crisis, but with a polycrisis, a term used by economists to describe the dangerous intersection of multiple, interconnected systemic failures. It's a clinical word for a much more visceral reality. The entire global system is stretched so thin that every new pressure point causes the entire web to vibrate. For the first time in modern history, we are witnessing the simultaneous peaking of economic fragility, food and energy insecurity, geopolitical conflict, widespread social unrest, climate volatility, and the rapid expansion of digital control. The intricate globalized world that was built on assumptions of stability and continuous growth is now revealing its inherent fragility. The World Economic Forum's 2025 Global Risks Report offers a sobering perspective, indicating that over 70% of global leaders now believe we are entering a tipping point decade. This is a period where multiple systemic failures are expected to overlap, amplify each other, and create cascading consequences that are difficult to predict and control. The evidence is all around us. Global supply chains remain brittle and vulnerable to disruption. National energy grids are underfunded and ill-equipped to handle surging demand. Debt levels in more than 90 countries now exceed their entire economic output. Even military and intelligence agencies, like the Pentagon, are now modeling compound risk scenarios where events like a major cyber attack, a critical infrastructure failure, and widespread civil unrest could unfold faster than any government's ability to respond. In the midst of this growing instability, the outlines of a new world are beginning to form, one characterized by shifting global alliances, increased state surveillance in the name of security, and the flirtation with powerful new tools of financial control, such as programmable central bank digital currencies. The illusion of normalcy is being maintained by little more than inertia, but inertia is a force that eventually breaks. The quiet dread that so many are feeling is a rational response to these converging threats. It's the survival instinct kicking in, recognizing that the world is on the cusp of a hard turn. The truly aware are not waiting for an official announcement. They are already taking action, preparing for a future that will be profoundly different from the recent past.